Hi everybody, I'm Dennis. Welcome back to the Bindery. Over the years I've accumulated quite a collection of specialized bookbinding tools, and I'm often asked as to where I find them all. Well, my first ones were those that I made myself. If you've watched the channel at all, then you've no doubt already seen some of them, like my piercing cradle, sewing frame, book press, and of course my trusty finishing press. The one wooden tool that I didn't make is my combination press. I actually found it listed on an online marketplace, and I made a 5-hour round-trip drive just to pick it up. In fact, local online forums like Facebook Marketplace have been my primary source for hard-to-find bookbinding tools. Both of my cast iron presses were acquired that way, as were my various cutters and trimmers. That's even how I found my flat filing cabinets. By far the hardest things to find are second-hand brass finishing tools. I've purchased some in auctions or from other bookbinders, but my best finds have again been through local online listings. Unlike hammers, chisels, and rulers, such specialized tools can be nearly impossible to find, so when I see one, I'm sure to grab it. Such was the case with this collection. I picked up this lot of over 110 hand finishing tools over a year ago. It was a great find, and you may have even seen a few of these in some of my recent projects. The collection itself has been sitting here on the bench, taking up space and collecting dust, so it's time I did something about it. Despite some of the fancy designs, these tools are really pretty simple. The brass portion has a tapered shaft that is simply pressed into a hole in the wooden handle. The handles are roughly the same length, averaging about 6 inches or so, though there are a few that are a bit longer or a bit shorter. Even so, being single-handed tools, they're all broadly the same size. So I should be able to come up with some sort of storage system that's better than a box full of empty coffee cups. My first step is to take some measurements, and I work out that 1.5 inches should be a good spacing. I'll need to create some sort of notched rails for the tools to sit in, but I'll work that out later. First, I need to build some sort of cabinet to hold everything, so it's down to the wood shop to make some sawdust. I'm using some laminated softwood panels that I got from the home store for the body of the cabinet. They're a good trade-off between the uniform dimensions of plywood and the properties of solid wood, and they're more convenient than gluing up panels myself. With 4 pieces cut to size, I can shut off the power tools and move on to some handwork. Here I'm marking the thickness of the boards to lay out some dovetails. For you non-word workers, a dovetail is a traditional interlocking joint that resists coming apart, even without glue. I've cut hundreds of these over the years, but it's been a while, so this will be a good refresher. I still remember to mark an X on all the places that I need to cut away though. You only have to cut one set of dovetails backwards to learn that lesson. The sides of the tails get cut with a back saw first, and I do 2 boards together to save time. I'll then follow that up with a narrow coping saw to trim out most of the waste. On the edges, I can cut in from the sides with a back saw, which leaves a nice clean cut. Those spaces between the tails, however, get cleaned up with a mostly sharp chisel. I think I need to make time for a sharpening session. With those done, I can lay out the corresponding cuts with a marking knife. This way, even if my first cuts were a bit off the mark, I'll still end up with a snug fit. Provided I don't veer off course, that is. The trick is to split the line in half with the saw, which is easier said than done. As before, I cut the sides of the joints first, and then with the waste cut away, I can test the fit. Not too bad. Looks like I've still got it. All that needs now is to get cleaned up with a chisel. All the rest of the joints get cut the same way off camera. Here I'm just cleaning up a slot in the sides to receive the tool rails that I've designed. It's sort of hard to explain right now, but it'll make more sense in a minute. I also cut out a portion along the back edges so I can add a panel to close in the back of the cabinet. With all the joinery done, it's time for some assembly. I'm using standard yellow carpenter's glue here, and if you're wondering, the answer is no. It's not suitable for bookbinding. Wood glue is for wood. I need to work quickly here as there's a lot of surface area to cover before the glue starts to set. I'll follow up a big meaty fist with some long clamps to keep all those joints together, and then I'll give it a couple of hours to dry. With the case out of the clamps, I can do a little cleanup on my joinery, first with a block plane to bring down the high spots, and then I'll follow up with a sander to smooth things out. With the case basically done, I now need to sort out the tool rails. I'm marking my 1.5 inch spacing onto a wide piece of hard maple. My idea is to make a series of notches in the board, which I can then cut into strips. To do that, I'll angle the blade on my table saw and adjust the height to make cuts only about 1/4 of an inch deep. I line up the marks on the board to a reference line that I put on the cutting sled to make the first cut. I then reverse the board to make a second cut, which creates the V-notch. It looks to be working, so I'll go ahead and cut all 19 notches. Then, it's a simple matter of reconfiguring the saw to slice the board up into narrow strips. By cutting all the rails from a single board, it ensures that the spacing on all the rails will be exactly the same. Here's where those slots in the sides of the cabinet come into play. The rail simply drops into place and is held in the grooves without any glue. To hold it down and support the next rail, I made these little spacer blocks off camera. They fit snugly into the groove and are held just by friction. By not putting any glue, I'll have the option of coming back and changing the layout later if I feel the need to. When I get to the top, I need to add in the last few rails together, otherwise I wouldn't have room to angle them into place. The spacers get added in after, with 2 final ones at the top of each groove to lock the whole thing together. The tools will be supported at the back by a series of narrow shelves, which in turn will rest on some blocks that are glued and nailed into place. The shelves don't need to be full width, as they only need to contact the back of the handles, and I think the 1/4 inch thickness should be more than enough support. I do need to add a shelf to match every rail though. The last couple are tricky to get installed, but eventually I get them into place. The back of the cabinet gets closed up with some 1/4 inch plywood. I didn't have a piece large enough to do the whole thing, so I had to do it in 2. I did have the foresight to put the join along the back of one of the shelves though to hide it. Not that it'll really be visible behind all the tools, but it's a nice touch. Those panels get tacked into place with some nails. The final thing to do is to add a hardwood cleat for hanging the cabinet. I've recessed the cleat so that the cabinet will sit flush against the wall, which also allows me to attach it with some screws through the sides. So with that, all the construction is done. Let's head back out to the bindery and get it on the wall. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's a big improvement. I still need to take some time to fine-tune how those are organized, but being able to easily look over all the designs is just so much better. Every time I look at them, I just want to take them down and put them to use. But as appealing as that is, I think I need to use the momentum that I've built up now to make some more upgrades to the bindery. That means my next video is going to be more of a channel update, but don't worry, I've got some good news to share, and we'll be back to our regular bookbinding shenanigans very soon. If you're still here, then thank you. I really do appreciate you spending your time with me. You're the best. So, see you next time.